But really, every human being has mental health.
That is more important than even human life.
It would be helpful if you could share some of that and let's see what Dr. Wemi has to say about that. What have you observed around people's willingness to talk about it?
Like people say they are counselors and they just keep advising people. They are not often counselors. Leave professional counseling. I would mention the church, but we will go to a church.
Hosting.
Hi everyone, I'm Tosin Lawani. Lovely to be here.
Okay, and we've got Andy.
Hi
Andy
everyone.
Wakalo.
My name is Andy Wakalo, all the way from Nigeria, Lagos precisely.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Cool. So here today we have a special guest with us. We have Dr. Wemi Agboaye. Welcome, Dr. Wemi. We're really pleased to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome, ma. And Tosin is going to tell us a little bit about Dr. Wemi, and then we'll start.
Okay, I'll be glad to do the honors. So I'm going to read it out because Dr. Wemi's credentials they just have to be read. It's quite a bit. So Dr. Wemi Agboaye is a chartered and registered psychologist, a registered social worker, and a psychotherapist with many years experience of working in mental health services with children and families. She has also worked in relationship therapy, neurodevelopment conditions, people with eating disorders, and is currently working in the NHS within an older adult psychology service. Dr. Wemi provides a person-centered, holistic approach that starts from where the individual is and allows the individual to feel safe and work through issues at their own pace, developing insight and finding meaning, purpose, and direction on life issues. She has specialist knowledge and experience of working with people from diverse backgrounds and cultures and how these inform how people perceive themselves, others, and the world. So that in a nutshell, and I'm sure this doesn't even begin to capture everything she is, but that in a nutshell is Dr. Wemi Agboaye, who we're very delighted to have with us today as we discuss this really, really special and exciting topic. Ada, do you want to tell us the topic?
So the topic today is mental health and African taboo, right? So basically, we're going to be talking about mental health and how all of us here originally have an original African background, and we all know from experience how mental health issues are kind of like we don't talk about it. It's a no-no. Mostly, we're not generalizing, but this is something that we have figured out and found out mostly. We've talked about it in our next show. We're actually going to be looking at people's actual views, on how they see mental health, how Africans, both here in the diaspora and back at home, actually see and understand mental health. Thankfully, we have Dr. Wemi here, who is going to be explaining a few things to us and talking to us about what actually is mental health. And we'll just go with the flow. So please enjoy as we move forward with this. Okay. So Tosin, did you want to ask our first question?
Yes. So thanks, Ada. So, Doctor, there's been a lot going on, banded around, particularly in the West, and I think particularly here in the UK, around mental health. Senior leaders have come out to talk about their mental health situation where they've had mental health illnesses. And there seemed to be a real huge push to helping people embrace, accept that it is possible for you to look normal, but actually do have mental illness. But, it would be good to, at least in the first instance, let's get your view. What exactly is mental health and what is mental health illness?
Thank you so much. It's simple to unpackage, but it's also complex. Because as human beings, we have similar experiences that may affect different people in different ways. But mental health is about our psychological and emotional well-being. So some people would say that mental ill health is just about we having spiritual emergence, that there is something in me that is wanting to come out in relation to the experiences I am having. So if what I am experiencing, I sense it as unpleasant, uncomfortable, not really helpful to me, or the direction I want my life to go in, it might destabilize my psyche. And so we will say that's mental illness. And it can come in different ways. I'm being very very careful how I present this. So somebody might say I'm anxious or I'm depressed, or we may find people who have psychosis. That means they hear voices when other people can't hear those voices, or they hear things, or see things, or smell things, or experience things that other people don't experience. And then we may put a label, that's a mental illness. So when you come into professional settings, maybe you come into a hospital, or you see a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, then it's always useful to have a label, because then we may know what we are dealing with. But really, every human being has mental health issues. I'm not saying mental health illness. So there's a difference. We
Okay.
all grapple with our mental health to one extent or the other.
Okay. Okay. That's really really helpful to know. Ada, we were talking the other time about how within amongst what we've seen here in the West, we've seen that people are embracing it more and more, and people are having the courage to come out and actually say, I struggled with my mental health. I think back home in Nigeria, and Andy, you can clarify as well, that hasn't really been the case. And we were wondering, Ada, I think you were going to ask a question about the popularity around amongst Africans.
Yeah. So yeah, like Tosin just said, it's becoming quite a thing now. A lot of people, especially here, are promoting mental health wellness, mental health awareness. And so we were wondering if you could, I mean, being a British African, if you could kind of if you can give us some insight as to why it is so unpopular, to talk about mental health problems among Africans. So would like to know what you think, Dr. Wemi.
Okay. I think when you are disclosing or talking about your mental health issues or vulnerabilities, you're actually showing and making yourself vulnerable and saying, I need help here. I don't feel strong in this area of my life. And in our communities, traditionally, we celebrate strength. And sometimes when people have some difficulty, we might label them as being possessed. There's something wrong with them. There's something from the family. You know, some people will say the village people are after this person. So we label them. We scapegoat them as the problem. So when people don't want to be seen as a problem, and they want to be seen as strong enough so they will be accepted, when they struggle, they'll keep a lead under it. So do I feel safe enough to say I am struggling? And there are many things in our environment, in our society, in our day-to-day living experience that may make people feel so vulnerable mentally. We talk about work, we talk about abuse, we talk about financial difficulties, relationship difficulties, identity issues, different experiences that may make people feel out of sorts with themselves. So some researchers will talk about we being born and we came into this world with a way of being, with our own giftings. And then our society begins to mold us. The environment we grow up in begin to mold us the way our environment wants us to be. So if you're a very vicarious person, you're outgoing, and if you're a woman or a girl, the society might say, stop being loud. So you learn to rein yourself in. Or if you're a male and you're very sensitive emotionally, society may tell you you're being girly. So you begin to lose aspects of who you are. And you can't find yourself. So we begin to look, who am I really? And the more there's a discrepancy between the true you and the mask or persona you put on, the more vulnerable you will be. But then society has told you have to be a certain way. So in trying to be the way they want you to be, you lose yourself. And then you can't say, well, I'm actually struggling here. Because then people would say, get a grip. Oh, well, you're depressed, pull yourself together. And the more you have to show yourself to be what you're not, the more you will struggle.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a ticking bomb. I don't know, Andy, from your perspective, being, back home, what have you observed? Because I think it will be helpful if you could share some of that, and let's see what Dr. Wemi has to say about that. What have you observed around people's willingness to talk about it in Nigeria, or even acknowledge that they are going through it? I think Dr. Wemi has mentioned depression as being one of those things. What's sort of the openness around this in Nigeria, or what stage are we at?
Well, thank you. First, like she said, I think the level of awareness in Nigeria, let me speak for Nigeria, which I know very well, is practically nil when you take into consideration our population and the amount of awareness that goes with it. Even amongst the educated people there, we are still caught up in the grip of our traditional beliefs. Such things of they do you from home. Or a man's supposed to be manly, so you shouldn't show, or you shouldn't talk. You shouldn't talk about it, or don't talk because of your enemies, your neighbor, or blah blah blah. Mind you, remember, a large proportion of Nigerians are under the poverty level. So even the poverty itself further compounds their problem, because it's only poverty level that you hear somebody says his neighbor is doing him something. And relating with people, I found out that that word mental illness is considered madness in Nigeria. Abroad, it's differentiated. This is this, this is this, this. In Nigeria, when somebody the in language is like the person decrease. So once they say decrease, is equated to somebody who is walking on the street naked, picking up things from the bin. To us, mental illness is that person. Anything in between, we do not know. So I guess it's the awareness in Nigeria is still minimal.
I think it's really interesting for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure if you, Dr. Wemi, you want to shed some light on how do you think we can then make, I mean, from what Andy says, there's barely any awareness about mental health problem. What are ways we can, I guess we'll talk about it a little bit more, but in Africa especially, how can we help this mindset change, this mindset of mental health illness being somebody they craze, like Andy said, or the person don't go colo, that kind of thing. How can we change that?
What I have found, I've been lived in Nigeria and grown up in Nigeria, now living in the UK. And I saw that I've seen people who people would say have mental health difficulties in Nigeria. And I'm actually thinking, based on what my brother Andy's just said now, how do we re-victimize those who need help the most in our communities? And in order to have this turn around, we've got to develop what we call self-compassion for ourselves as individuals and for our communities. And we have to take it. People who are public health professionals, they will talk about handling this at a tertiary level, secondary level, and primary level. So the kind of discourse we're having here is the primary level. We are creating awareness. We're doing some psychoeducation so that we can begin to remove some of the taboos and scapegoating and revictimization of people who need our help the most. And how do people develop mental health difficulties? So you will go on Nigerian roads, you will see somebody who is walking around in rags, and maybe they are psychotic, or they are running after people, and people, oh, look at that, that's weary. Or what my sister Ada just said now, you say, what did you say they will call them? Could you say that again?
Colo.
Aha. We begin to give them derogatory names. So that when people see themselves struggling like that person, they keep a lead on it. Or families will keep their relative who is struggling under lock and key, because we can't show the world that we have this problem. So I think it comes from a place of knowing that mental health issues is normal and it is relatable to every single human being to one degree or another. And it doesn't mean that God does not like you or you've sinned, or it's what you're sometimes it is true that things that have gone on in generations of the same family might affect later generations, but it doesn't mean that God loves other families more than yours. Wherever you are lovable, you matter, And God loves you.
Mm.
And it's about you loving yourself, because until we come home to our own selves, we'll keep on putting this mask that will make us put down another and elevate ourselves.
Mm.
But really, when people put down people who have mental health difficulties, it is those parts of themselves that they are really running away from.
Mm. Mm.
I
First.
think that's, oh, sorry.
Go on.
I was just going to say, I think that
Yeah, go
is,
on.
yeah, that is really profound,
Yeah.
and deep. The other time you mentioned how expectations of society is part of the things that
Hmm.
make us keep a lid on who we are, and so we don't express ourselves, and sometimes that does lead to a complete breakdown. And I think my comment at the time was, that sounds like a ticking bomb, because particularly in communities where culture is strong and
Yeah.
is a force,
Hmm.
and in our community back, in Nigerians, we do a lot of, I will say it's locally and then I'll interpret. Kilaya saw, what will people say? Ah,
Mm-hmm.
you can't study this because they will
That's
say
it.
that. And then you've got this internal turmoil because you're being somebody that you are not. You're
Mm.
studying
You're
what you don't
not.
want to study. You're having to conform, and the rest, your inner person is saying to you, but that is not who you are. And
Yeah.
that starts to affect the individual. And just very quickly, I watched a TED talk very recently, which was so sad, about this guy who looked very successful, family, children, top notch guy at work, and killed himself. And
Yeah.
the wife was like, she did not see it coming. She did not know he
Mm.
was depressed. It wasn't until after he was died that she found his diary, where he had been writing stuff about what he was going through. He hadn't opened up to her. And so I think it makes us start to wonder, how can we even know? Because at the end of the day, if someone is going through this kind of thing, you want to be able to help. How can we know the signs? Or as the individual themselves, when they're going through it, when you think about the fact that you really don't want to admit to yourself that this is an issue, what are the telltale signs that can help the individual or people who want to support quickly identify, this is a mental health issue, you need help? What sort of signs could we look out for?
That's a really lovely question. And as we are doing this, we can even ask ourselves on this panel, when do I notice myself being demotivated, not motivated? And especially with children, you could notice your child not wanting to maybe they don't want to go to school, or they're not studying. And you might think, oh, you're just being lazy. But it could be we just needing to draw close, listen more, know what their struggles are. Some children get bullied in school, they don't want to go to school, and their parents never know, because they're being bullied in school. Then they come home, the parents bully them too, because, oh, you're lazy, without listening. And I think the first thing that we need to do is to be curious about the other. Could be your partner, could you be your children, could be any relative or friend. Be curious. Could be about our own selves too. So if somebody is likes wearing makeup and suddenly doesn't wear makeup anymore, you would know what's happened. Maybe the person likes visiting people, but then likes now to stay in bed all day. You begin to ask yourself, what is happening? So it's about coming home to myself and understanding, where do I want my life to go? Or what does this person really like doing? Have they lost motivation? Are they apathetic? Are they angry? Do they have a short fuse? Are they withdrawn? You begin to notice what is different. And then when we love people, it's sometimes difficult for us to accept that they are going through difficult times, because we want the people we love to be okay. So we begin to tell them, you should be okay. We begin to debate with them why they should be okay. It makes it worse, not better. So it's just listening. Everybody's answer is within them. So we can just look at the story of Job in the Bible. He was feeling depressed. He's lost his children. And then what were his friends doing? His friends came to sit with him and they began to lecture him. Oh, maybe you've offended God. Maybe you need to ask for forgiveness. Maybe this is, but they all got it wrong. And it shows how we all can just get it wrong. So the thing we need to do is to be curious, compassionate, accepting of another person's vulnerability. Just sit with them and see what emerges. Whether it's my children, maybe it's my spouse, maybe it's a parent, a friend, a workmate. It's curiosity first. And let them tell their story.
Wow.
So we begin to notice. I did write that sometimes I work with people who have maybe OCD. OCD is something that sometimes people don't even see is a mental health difficulty. That need to control how the environment is. Maybe I have to check everything is okay. Have I locked the door? I have to keep counting things. I have to make sure everywhere is very clean. And then so that the people in the environment of that person begin to feel uncomfortable. But putting shame on them does not change the situation. It makes it worse. Because that person is having to do all those rituals in order to feel safe. So I can be curious and say, when did this start? What was happening around the time this thing started? Because I want to know what made them vulnerable in the first place. It could be someone who is depressed. I want to know, what is this person feeling hopeless about? When we even look at the situation in Nigeria, when many graduates don't have a job, when you have to be tempted sometimes to sell yourself to get a job, why wouldn't people feel depressed? When you feel like you are not in charge of your own life, you feel hopeless, you feel there's no way out, but there's always a way out. But that's just the feeling. And so we need to open up to this. What am I struggling with? What do I feel has been taken away from me? What have I been denied? Then I sit with that. And then we have people we can sit with who can listen as we walk through it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ma. I think for me, just go on, Andy. Did you want to say something?
Yes. Thank you, Ma, for what you have said, because here again, I'm a bit at loss here. Because you say, sit with them. When you spoke about Job, the people, their diagnosis was wrong because they did not really know what was actually at play. Now, we find that happening practically every day in Africa. Most people rather, when they're having challenges, rather than go to trained personnel, people who are trained for such things, like the OB, what was it you called it?
OCD.
OCD. I think I'm suffering from it. From just speaking to you now, I think I'm suffering from it because I always want to make sure something is work. I'm a warrior. I call it warrior by nature. Now, but having said that, most people rather go to their churches, go to their pastors to go and find solutions to this. Would you suggest that to be a very good approach to solving their problems? That's my question.
I can't hear Andy very well. So maybe Ada can repeat what he said. The line is
Okay.
really not good enough.
Okay. Oh, that's a shame. He was saying that and let me say it again. What he was saying
Okay,
basically was,
I heard the
can you hear
question.
me now?
is it any
Can you hear
better?
me now? Is it any
Yes, I can
better?
hear you better now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm saying, basically what I'm
Go
saying
on.
is that,
It's just a bit fuzzy.
okay, basically what I'm saying is, most times people rather go to their
I can hear
pastors.
you.
Okay. They rather go to their pastors
Hmm.
or go to the for counseling, because, like we spoke about Job, when the people gathered
Hmm.
around, they meant well, but their diagnosis was wrong. Where they were treating was generally not the problem. So, and we find
Yes,
that that
yes.
is what is obtainable these days in Nigeria. Rather than go to trained personnel,
Hmm.
or are the pastors, let me ask this question. Would you recommend that people go to their pastors rather than trained personnel to get solutions to their problems? Like to problems, like to challenges like this, if I might call it that.
Thank you so much. That's a really, really lovely question, and I can hear you. I can hear you clearly now. Um, do you know? Do you know that in America, most churches have trained psychologists or counselors? Because if you, as a pastor, give counseling without a counselor's training or professional training to your congregants, and let's say they commit suicide or their situation gets worse, they can take you to court. So ministers, I mean church ministers, leave professional counseling to the trained, and they do the pastoring. And the two are different things, and they are exclusive. So a pastor's role is to watch over the congregation. The congregation, your church member can come and talk to you, or if you're a Muslim or whatever you belong to, or you can come to your leader and say, I'm having this problem. They will hold the space for you, and they can say, oh, maybe we need a professional's help here. They can still pray for you, but it is not their role to offer counseling. And I'll give an example. When I was living in Nigeria, I was very much into children's ministry, and I love it. So when I came to train here, I wanted to work with children and their families. But all I've known how to do was to work from a church's perspective. So my supervisor here will say, Wemi, you're very good, but what is the purpose of what you're doing? And my training now equips me to be a therapist, to be a psychologist, because in so doing, I'm not bringing my worldview. I'm not telling people how they should think. I'm holding the space for them, a therapeutic space, which means a healing space for them to find their answer. Because if I tell them what I should do, I'm telling them what my brain is telling me. So I need to listen to what is their truth about their own particular issue. And that's the difference between a professional counselor and maybe a ministerial counseling. I don't know if I'm making sense to you. You may want to ask me more. So if somebody has OCD and they go to the church, yes, there are different levels of difficulties. Maybe your friend can talk to you and say, oh, why don't you do it this way? But if you're struggling, you need professional help. But the question is, in Africa, how much access do we have to professionally trained psychologists or counselors. Because I have seen on some programs in Nigeria, people will say they are counselors and they just keep advising people. They are not offering counseling in a professional kind of way. Or somebody might just do one online, maybe 1 day or 2 day course and say they are, and they market themselves as counselors. I think that is dangerous. Because the training that you need to be able to hold that space for people is many years training.
Okay, can I ask, how do we now identify those who one should go to? Because from what you just said now, which is actually true, especially I'm speaking from Nigeria, Africa now, how do we identify those who are? Because from what you just said, off the cuff, I don't know anybody like that. That's the truth. While you were speaking, I was trying to think, okay, which I know a GP, in Nigeria, a doctor is a doctor, practically is a doctor of everything. If somebody say, in fact, the word shrink is Yaba left or Jude, word one, that's mad people. So it is the challenge, I think, now is how do we identify those who are the right people to meet? Do we actually have them in Nigeria? Let me ask that question.
How do we identify? I'm asking that question again. The line is not too good.
How do we identify those who are professional counselors, the right kind of counselors in Nigeria? And I think, Andy, you also asked, do we have? I think
Yes.
there are a few. I mean, at least I know at least one person who trained here, and she's a professional counselor. She is Nigerian. So I think there are a few. But if I just layer on with that question, Dr. Wemi, I think one of the things that has helped the West is there are regulatory bodies.
Resources.
Yes, and there's a lot of regulation. There are regulatory bodies around counselors here. So if you need a counselor, very easy. You get on the regulatory websites and you can check, for people's names. So there's a register of properly trained counselors. I don't think we have that back home at this time, and so that is that's probably one of the challenges that we face. So back to Dr. Wemi, in terms of if she has any tips that could help people know if they can rely on a certain person who is calling themselves a professional counselor.
I like what my sister just said now. It's we can't use the measure we use in the West and take to Nigeria or other parts of Africa. And I have a heart towards this. I'm being careful what I say here because on LinkedIn, so I know we have it, but it's just not, we don't have many. We don't have enough. And so there's still a role for the church. It's just that to whom much is given, much is expected. And I'm being careful here. I'm being tentative too. So if I am struggling with anxiety here, or I'm struggling with depression, or some people struggle even with their eating, you can just go to your GP. And nobody needs to know who don't need to know. But here in Nigeria, but when we're talking about Nigeria, Ha. We need all to come together. What you're saying to me is so big, and we can start a discussion here. And I'm going to give this story. When I was young, I won't mention which church, but we will go to a church, and young girls who are vulnerable, we have about up to 5 adults beating up one little girl with brooms. They'll say she's Mary. And by beating her with broom, you cast the demon out. And so I'm saying, if we're going to still go to our churches, we have many churches, maybe our church leaders can begin to fund this training to understand the vulnerabilities of children, women, men, elderly people, everybody in their congregation, including the pastor. What I know now from having studied this is that some girls, they are sexually abused, physically abused, because they have to leave their poor parents to go and live with somebody else. And they get abused. So they begin to be dissociated. They may say things that people don't understand. Then people will say they have witchcraft. And they begin to doubly abuse them. How can you take away demon from somebody by beating them with broom? I don't know if that still happened, but I saw this. And I saw it happened to vulnerable young people. And it also happens to women, and maybe to men too, if you're poor. So it's a sliding scale of we re-victimizing the most vulnerable people in our society and communities. So what do we need to do? There's no simple answer. We can start a discussion here. And what I would say is that in Africa, we still need the churches. We still need the mosque. We still need the religious leaders, because that's what is easily accessible to people. But to whom much is given, much is expected. The pastor shouldn't put himself up as the only one who hears from God. We are all royal priesthoods. It's just holding space for that person to find himself. And if somebody says, I was being sexually abused, don't let's keep a lid on it. Otherwise, it will keep going on and on and on. Most mental health difficulties come from trauma, sometimes complex, repeated trauma. You're not giving food, you're put out in the dark, you're locked away, you're beaten up, you're sexually abused, you're neglected, and over time, you begin to dissociate. You don't even know who you are anymore. These are really complex issues, and I'm treating these, I'm holding it with care, not knocking anybody, but saying we need to start listening to the people who are vulnerable. And all of us are vulnerable, including pastor, including me, including every one of us here. We all have our vulnerabilities. Can I dare show myself the way I truly am and where it's hurting? Or do I put on a mask and say everything is all right? Then I advise other people over issues that I don't deal with in my own life. Because you cannot help people beyond where you are able to go yourself. So it's calling all of us to be real and true. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that is
Oh my gosh, I know.
I'm just trying to process everything you've said.
Even
That
me,
is
it's so loaded.
so loaded. That's it. So
Yeah.
loaded. I think I like in terms of your response to Andy, please come in and let us know what you think. But I think, from my perspective, I think you're right. I think it's like a start. In terms of, we know we don't have as much resources as we have it as there are in the West, but interestingly, back home we have more of those issues, because when you think about all these things that you
A
have just
lot.
listed, we know that it remains a ticking bomb. The way someone described it was that many of us are just walking wounded, um, and it's a big challenge. And yes, I agree with your approach that the church needs to be more responsible. We need to get the information, the learning. We need to start listening. We need to go and get the training and stop doing, well, I've been through it so I can solve your problem, or because I'm a man of God, I know the Holy Spirit will tell me, and all that stuff. We need to re-educate ourselves. Andy, I don't know if you wanted to, your view. You're on mute. You're on mute, Andy.
Did you want to say something? Oh, you're mute.
No,
Yes or no? You're muted.
You are practically saying what I wanted to say. But then again, I think from all what she had said, the onus still rests on our first port of call. It's not even government, sadly enough. It's our religious leaders.
Yes.
I think, like you just said, it's not good enough to say you are the one hearing from God. They need training. I think that is where that awareness should start from. Because most times, in a lot of cases, they themselves feel they are all knowing. Until somebody begins to know, till the person is aware that I need training on this. It's not about, this is from what you have just said, it's not a religious, it's not a spiritual thing. It's a mental thing. Now, somehow we manage to mix both of them up. We are not able to separate what is mental, what is spiritual. For them, if it mixes up, it's a spiritual thing. So I think there needs to be an awareness starting from our religious leaders, because they need that training. But the heart, how will this be transmitted to them? I guess that's the problem. We have identified it, but how will this work with them?
I think, if I may just comment, I think part of that is what we're doing. Part of that is individuals, all of us, taking ownership of who we are and becoming responsible. And then we start to, because we're all in the churches, right? I think part of that. I think something that has occurred to me that is, I think, is fundamentally at the heart of this is that, and I say this carefully as well. I like the way Dr. Wemi always says, I'm being careful when I say this. We don't value human life in Nigeria. And until the day we start to value human life, that is when we will, before we say something or decide that we are prescribing something, we'll be more careful. We have to learn that life is precious. The people beating a child with a broom have not recognized that that is a human life. A human life. Once it's gone, it can't come back. That human life could have changed so many souls, could have been an inventor, could have impacted so many others. We beat that child with a broom and destroy what sanity she's got and create problems. And this is, it's a situation that I have seen prevalent in our culture. We haven't, for some reason, we don't value human life. It's when we value, because when I look at the West and I compare, one of the things I see is whether you are a baby or you are an adult, you are giving full 100% attention. I mean,
Mm,
they have their own flaws. I'm not saying they're perfect, but I'm
mm,
sort of just, I try to learn.
yeah.
And I think it's recognizing that every life is precious, that makes them put in place laws that help to protect every life, whether it's mentally, physically, in whatever
Yeah.
perspective. So that's another shift I think we need to make that can help to drive this. Sorry, Ada, go on.
No, I just like what you just said, shift, because I think what has been on my mind since, and I've been absorbing a lot and trying to process everything, is that it's a mind shift thing, you know. And in our culture, and in many cultures that are not even African cultures, they value, it's an honor culture. We have this pride thing, honor thing, and that is more important than even human life. It's more important that everyone in my family seems perfect. It's more important that I'm not seen as a failure. It's more than human life. So even if you say this to someone, they're like, hey, I mean, why do people in some cultures kill their own children rather than face the shame of them being, something that they don't want them to be? Is the kind of, so it's a total, I think what we need to be looking for is a mind shift, a total mind shift. And it's things like this that we're doing. And perhaps, we want to encourage, like you said, the religious leaders to bring things like this up. We need to change mindsets, no matter how we hammer human life is important for them in their heads. Like, my honor is more important, I think, I mean, I've just been thinking about everything, because everything, like Dr. Wemi said, is so valid. All these things are the reasons why, a lot of people are messed up. A lot of us are messed up too. I like the fact that she said a lot of us have mental issues. Maybe not mental illness. It would be good to differentiate, but a lot of us, based on the background we came from, some of us were abused as children, some of us were put down as children, a lot of people are struggling with mental issues, but until we change the way, for some people, it doesn't even matter, until our mindsets, to me, listening to everything, I'm thinking, till people actually allow mindsets to change, we may not see, any change, no matter how especially when you've lived in this side and you see the way I remember, even in 99 years, look at the prince that just died, the queen's husband. He was 99 years old. They rushed him to the hospital. They did everything they could. When my grandmother was ill in Nigeria, they were like, Mama is old. You people should just leave her to die. That kind of thing.
Human life.
Human life. So it's going back to the mental health thing. I think a lot of our mindsets needs to change. And for me, I think it's also really tricky with the church thing, especially when there's absolutely no other to if there's absolutely no other option, and you're going through this really horrible, horrific thing, especially back in Africa. Who do you then talk to? I guess it's more about, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Wemi, I think for me, it's more about the pastors being in a place to be vulnerable, to say, look, I don't know it all. We'll try and get you the help you need. But a lot of people have been so frustrated with this. You are demon possessed. Yeah, we need to cast out the demons from you. And that's why you're behaving like that. I had a maths teacher from a particular church, which I'm not going to mention, who used to tell us all the time, you need deliverance. We didn't get the maths right. And he'd be like, you need deliverance. And all he needed to do was break it down for us, So it's tricky. And like you said, Tosi, and Dr. Wemi also said, there are trained professionals in Nigeria. I think maybe we need to be creating more awareness that these people actually exist. And if we start being vulnerable and making mental health, stop demonizing mental health problems, it will be easier for these people to come out and show themselves. Because if it's such a taboo thing, these people won't even want to, nobody is going to be advertising, oh, by the way, we know this psychologist. Nobody wants to admit that they need that. But if it becomes a thing where we're all vulnerable and start to say, hey, I've actually suffered depression, maybe, I don't know. That's just my
I think
own. Yeah,
I
go on.
think if I just come in, because I have one other question. I think you're right, Ada, and I do think some people. I see it on Instagram. I've seen a few people come out and say, I'm a trained psychologist and so on and so forth. However, you can almost start to see. Obviously, they will charge you. You can almost start to see that there is a possibility of thinking that this kind of issue is a problem for the rich. It is a person in Yoruba parlance. Etoba jẹun kánú ló máa ronú mental health. It's when your belly is full that you
That's
start
true.
thinking about things that seem to pertain to self-actualization. If you are hungry, so the people who live under the poverty line, who also have these issues, how do we make that shift for them? What is available to them? Because they have the issues as well.
I like that. I was waiting to actually say what you're saying. So I like your question. One thing I would like to say before I go on is that yes, we know we don't really take care of very vulnerable people in our society. But that's because our society itself is vulnerable. So it's like everybody take care of their own self. And when there is scarce resources, the weakest, they take the brunt of it. So I want us as Nigerians and other Africans in the diaspora to have compassion, acceptance for ourselves about where we are. We cannot shame ourselves into changing, or even, oh, we need to take care of people's mental health issue. Everybody, like I say in Nigeria, everybody faces NEPA issue. So let's say you are running a restaurant, you have a freezer, and NEPA just decides to take the lights. You are affected. So no matter how rich or poor you are, everybody is affected mentally. So when there is scarce resources, people begin to be selfish, but we have to understand this. And then when it comes to people who can't even afford it, even in England, to get a professional service, you need about 90 pounds an hour. How many people can afford that privately? But the good thing is we have the NHS. So coming to Nigeria, I think the kind of program we're having now, a whole lot of primary level intervention to even prevent these things from happening in the first instance. So churches might begin to organize counseling courses, introduction to counseling, which will be free to people. So just having those skills can help you to help the next person. So that's even at a primary level. A lot of literature, programs like this. Maybe you can do more programs like this and even focus on one issue. And maybe many more people should do that. That would help people at a very basic level. You don't have to pay for that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's been, I mean, there's still so much we want to talk about that. Given what time it is now, we would have to say that, and I'm sure Tosin and Andy will agree with me that we have to have another show.
Absolutely. In fact,
Yeah,
I'm thinking we have to have something that helps parents with their young children.
yeah,
teenagers, you know, it's
Yeah.
a very delicate time. So
Yeah.
we're definitely coming back to you, doctor.
We're coming back, and what we said before is we want to even be able to get people's views, what people have said, and we'll bring that back, and hopefully you'll be able to address individual things. And when we stream this, we'll also tell people before the next edition to have questions and stuff ready. Of course, I know you may not have all the answers, but things that people may want to talk about, or have you shed light on for the next show. So we'll have a bit more that you can respond to in the next show. And we're coming to exactly about an hour, and we don't want to drag this for too long. There's still so much burning in my mind that I want to be able to ask.
Ada, can I just quickly say something?
Yeah.
So just for people who don't really know, our objective on this show is to talk about pertinent issues, things like we've just done now, mental health, and give people, hopefully, so we intend to be bringing specialists on as much as possible so that people can access tools that can help them in their personal lives. I think the doctor has just explained how, even though psychologists may be expensive, if we have this kind of shows and she comes on, or somebody else comes on, and they share tips that can help people can go away with that and work on that and use that in their personal lives and solve some of these problems. So just letting everybody know that that's the objective of our show.
Yeah. And Andy, did you want to add anything else? We're just
I know we have run out of time. Like you say, I actually think we need to have another one when we have people's comments and people's response to this. Because when this goes up, I know it will stir the honestness.
Yeah.
So let's see that. We look forward to having you again, Doctor.
Yeah. And can I just say thank you so much, Dr. Wemi Agboaye. It's been, you saw I did talk a lot. I've been absorbing quite a bit, and there's so much. And I think I'm still going to go back to listen to this again, and it will help us even have more to, come back to you with when we have you here again. Can I just say to our viewers, please subscribe. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. You can see us on YouTube as well. If there's any other one, Twitter, I will put that up next time. I don't think we have the handle yet, but please subscribe. That way you'll be able to follow us and you'll know when we have a show next. Thank you so much for being part of this. We really appreciate it. From me, I say bye, Tosi.
Bye, everyone, and see you next time.
From me, I say thank you, Doctor, and I look forward to seeing you next time. And viewers, see you next time.
See you next time. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.